Okay, I call this meeting to order of the Hildebran Town Council. We will begin with a moment of silence. All right, thank you. And Logan is going to lead us in a pledge.
Yes, you will stand, face the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And Logan, I believe you have an amendment.
Yes, we need to add an amendment for a budget amendment. Let's do it as 7A. Is that good? 7A for a structural engineer review. And it'll be in the amount of $2,800.
Anything else?
Anything else that was not?
Oh, okay. All right. Anybody want to make a motion about the agenda?
Yes, I'll make that one.
To adopt it with the amendment. Okay, all in favor? Thank you. And we'll review the minutes for the May 24th, 2021 regular meeting minutes and the closed session minutes. Look those over and make a motion when you're ready.
I'll make a motion to adopt the minutes from the May 24th open and closed session.
All in favor? Thank you. Public comments.
If you pass your closed session minutes. Wait, will you see if I can sign that online? No public comments.
Okay, there being no public comment, I will move on to item 6, the public hearing for the fiscal year 2021 through 2022 budget ordinance. And I will open the public hearing. Anyone from the public want to make a comment on our budget? Okay, hearing none, I will close the public hearing for a budget ordinance. And we will go to 7A, which is now
Budget amendment.
budget
For
amendment.
structural and architectural review.
Thank you.
Yes, so the 2,800 will be to have the structural engineer come down from SKA Engineering. It is a $2,800 expense to have the tower and architectural plans reviewed. The council asked for it at the special meeting last Monday. They will conduct that review. It'll take about 2 to 3 weeks. They hope to have the findings back by the July meeting. If they can do it before, we can let council know that. If you want to hold a special meeting to review it sooner, we can do that. That's all I have. We do need a motion.
I'll make the motion to approve the budget.
All right, all in favor? Thank you. Now, let's see, consider approval of revision of facility rental fees, and that is in your packet.
So this is an immediate request for the revision of the all-season gym rentals. So currently the fee is $50 for all season, which is when East Berkeley doesn't use the gym. There's no limit as to how many hours. So we had a for-profit company organization, actually they're a nonprofit, but they wanted to sell tickets on a weekend and use the gym all day. So, we told them we'd have to get back to them, and they actually hung up before we were able to finalize the column. So anyway, so we propose that we change it, that the off-season rate is for 2 to 5 hours of basketball only for $50 instead of it just being open-ended, however many hours. So that's what our proposal is, that we immediately change that for the off-season for basketball only for 2 to 5 hours for that fee to be $50.
Is that gonna negatively affect anybody that's already renting the gym?
No.
Okay. I'll make a motion to approve.
All in favor? Thank you. Consider approval of fiscal year 2021 through 2022 schedule for fees and charges.
Okay, so although we had fees set up already for our zoning and for our rental fees, we really didn't have a schedule of fees for everything that we charge fees for, like our copies, code enforcement fees, civil fees, things like that, that are in our code of ordinances. And our planner pointed that out, that that is something that we should have. So I did work with our planner, has some examples of other towns. So I incorporated what we already had and came up with and added all the other things that we have fees for that weren't specifically in a schedule of fees that we are supposed to be approving every year. So this would be our schedule of fees for 21-22.
I noticed under civil fees, the very last one is discharge of projectile weapons, $170.
That is in our ordinance.
So if somebody fires a gun,
I would have to look at the ordinance to determine exactly what the definition of that means.
well, I got a neighbor that shoots off a cannon every once in a while.
I think we call it,
Tell
tell
us,
us, give them a check, don't fill in the amount, we'll fill it in.
Yeah.
Well, hey, let them go through that problem. Well,
Call Dustin.
Okay.
Shoot off a cannon, we don't go use that.
Well, and I know what you're talking about, and whenever Burke County comes out, they say those people live across the town lines, and so they're allowed, but it doesn't make sense. And I know there's some people on Wilson Road that do as well, so I don't know, but I know what you're talking about.
Okay, anyone want to make a motion?
Yeah, I'll make that motion.
I didn't ask any other discussion. All right, all in favor? Thank you. All right, consider approval of fiscal year 2021 through 2022 budget ordinance. That is in your packet, and I'm sure you've had a lot of time to look over it.
We can answer any questions, but the budget is balanced at $1,683,726.
Make the motion to approve the fiscal year 2021-2022 budget ordinance.
All in favor? Thank you. Approval of delegation to town manager to execute any necessary agreements of the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021, funds on behalf of council.
This would not be to expend any funds immediately. This would be more for to receive the funds, any bank account information we have to have. We have to have like a Sam's account, Dunn's account. It would be for things like that. If we did start expending money, we would have to bring the budget, have that approved by council and have it approved by the state.
Let's see, that requires a motion and vote.
Yes.
I'll make the motion to approve.
All right, all in favor? Thank you. Discussion of election cost of town beginning fiscal year 22-23.
We did contact the Burke County Board of Elections. They informed us that we currently spend anywhere between $1,200 and $1,700 per election. However, if the school board does move to even number of years, our costs would go roughly, they can't give us an exact dollar, but it would be in the neighborhood of around 5,300. That would be a $3,600 to $4,100 jump for our election costs.
Did you look as far as percentages wise, with the voter turnout specific to Hildebran in odd versus even number of years?
No.
The information I've seen, I don't have the exact numbers and I wish I did, but they are significantly different for just the town, not just the whole county, but just the town as far as the voter turnout. In even number of years versus odd number of years. You know, we've had that discussion previously. I still think that the town would benefit by having greater representation from turnout in those elections as a primary reason why we should move the elections. The cost is a secondary benefit of doing that, considering you're talking about, you know, 4-time increase on that. I think ultimately the town is always going to be better served when you have more people that show up to vote. And so I still stand by my opinion that we should move those municipal elections to even number of years. And I do know that the bill to move the school board elections has been sent to the governor's desk. So, I mean, that's gonna happen. So that cost increase is gonna happen regardless of whether we take action or not. But I still feel like that there's gonna be benefit to the town to have better representation in those elections.
Well, I feel, it would be more, if we keep the elections the way they are, it would be more focused on our town rather than where all the energy goes to the presidential election. I'm afraid we will be lost in the shuffle down at the bottom of the ballot, and I just feel it's better for the town to leave it as it is. I don't know, does anybody else have any thought on that?
I agree.
Well, sort of the cart before the horse, if we're doing this before it's decided what the county's gonna do. So if you're looking at an increase of about $5,000 somewhere in there.
The increase would be somewhere in the neighborhood of 3,600 to 4,100, but total cost is around 53.
You should have a bigger turnout on even number of years than,
Yes.
because you got more people voting on.
And I don't have the exact numbers for voter turnout, but I do know they're exponentially larger. I mean, that is true in general election years.
And yes, to Ben's point, you know, the county isn't moving that way, but the school board elections are moving that way. So we are going to be affected regardless of whether we take action or not. But I'm of the mindset that, you know, to be leaders, not followers. And in this sense, I don't think that we should just wait to what the county's doing if it's a benefit. And it's of my belief that it's a benefit in moving the election. I know some of you don't, but I think that's why this whole discussion was started previously. Last month was brought back up by Derek to continue that conversation as more information has come out, especially in what the cost and what, you know, what our senators have done to advance the movement of this.
So I guess the question is worth the $5,300, $5,000 more to do that. If your voter turnout's gonna be larger on even years, then, you know. And it's also gonna affect the time served by folks running. I think it might discourage some folks from running because it's gonna increase the length.
I don't think you'll get any more voters in town, regardless, whether it's big elections or small elections. People votes in the town, that's all it matters.
Well, the voter numbers, more people in the town are voting in even number of years than odd number of years. That is a fact. We don't have the numbers, but that has been proven. It's not saying that by moving it, you're gonna get more than what you're already getting, but, you know, democracy is always gonna be better served when you have a better representation of people for it. So if you've got 40% voting versus 20% voting, you're gonna have, you know, more people voting to get a better representation of the people of the offices. To the point of, you think serving an additional year is going to discourage people from wanting to serve? I don't see how, because if you're gonna offer to serve, then 5 years versus 4 years, I still feel like, I don't understand that argument.
I do. I think if I had originally run for council, I would have wanted to serve 5 years. I would have wanted to serve 4. Also increase it to 5 years.
And it would affect, Logan, would it affect the people that were elected in this last term to serve 5 years as well?
Yes, it would increase, the people who were elected, for example, Terry, Weaver and Derek Klein, I believe would be given an additional year under that scenario.
Well, is there any further discussion?
Well, I'll make a motion that we go ahead and move the election. Or
I
would
believe,
that be,
I believe it has to be made by somebody who
okay,
voted against it before.
so it'd be either Ben, Mike, or Derek if it was.
And we can't move the election, all we can do is
This is
request.
recommendation, right? It's not something that's going to be moved.
But we can vote on a resolution to do that, right, to that.
Which is already done.
Request.
Okay,
That's what I thought.
so I guess,
Because the General Assembly or the legislature, one that does.
so I guess the question is, Derek, since you brought this up the last meeting, have you or Mike or Ben had enough information presented to change your opinion?
I think, it's like anything else, you spend money, if you can save $5,000 on it, then you're gonna get more voter turnout. Yeah, a little bit more information than what I had last time, I guess, is the, but it's like Alice said, it's still, whether we vote one way or the other, it's still have the, because they can switch and make it even number of years as well, so. It's like,
Well, I mean, it's up to the three of y'all. Do y'all, have you had enough information to sway your change? Or to change your opinion?
I have on the financial side, if it'll save us money, we can get more registration, more people vote, I guess that's the whole thing. In any of these small towns is getting as many people as you can to vote. To Wendell's point, maybe, I think in smaller towns, I think people look at those things more closely. They might turn to that last page quicker than they would maybe than they would if there's just a general ballot. So I think it's true in any township.
Seems like it's common sense.
But yeah, y'all, if you want to vote for it, we can have a vote.
I mean, there can be a motion made before we can vote.
Can anybody make that motion, or would it have to be, one of those three?
So,
Yeah, anybody can make a motion. The motion will be express support for the pending legislation about changing the voting rights.
And knowing that this is not the final, they have to ultimately make.
So only the legislature can change
They
that.
can only make.
All you do is make a recommendation or a resolution of support of the proposed legislation.
I think what I've heard, to Cole's point, I've heard a lot more people moving it to even number of years. And that's been the recommendation through different, for more turnout, but
As you said correctly, and Cole said also, it doesn't change. All you do
it does not change anything.
expressing your support for the proposed legislation.
Because at the end of the day, they're gonna do what they wanna do anyway, right? In most cases, in a lot of ways. So,
Legislation generally.
that's right.
I think it speaks better volumes though if the town or the group that is being affected by it makes the recommendation instead of letting somebody in Raleigh make the recommendation.
I think you need to take a position.
And we have taken the position, but due to the lack of information,
Formalized.
that's why I think, now that we have more information than what we had previously, I think another vote needs to be made. So if anybody can make the motion, I would like to make the motion, but if only one of these three can do it, then it's up to them. So I guess that's the question. Redmond and
I
York,
think anybody can make this motion or resolution support.
then I will make a motion to, pass a resolution in support of moving the municipal elections to even number years.
Any further discussion? All right, all in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Consider approval of town manager contract revisions, and this is in your packet. Anyone have a comment on this?
No, the memo outlines each section of the agreement that's being changed, the dates, the amounts, the language. If you do have any questions, we can answer that.
I'll make the motion to approve the town manager contract revisions.
All in favor? Thank you. All right, discussion of fall festival.
Okay, so at this point, in terms of staff's position, we have a meeting with Rebecca Warren, later this week. She is the one who hosted the Blackberry Festival, got it up and going off the ground. I don't believe she's with it anymore though. We did meet with a gentleman named Chris Wren. He does some festival work. It's something he's doing a lot more now. His pitch to us was having several components, one being a memorial garden. It would be an area of US flags. What people could do is they could then either tie a ribbon, somehow donate a flag to an individual who had either lost their life or someone they wanted to pay honor to by going up to one of those flags and then claiming it. He would recommend like a dog show. He said one of the things that he's seen the best results out of in terms of people coming in, attend, staying and watching would be some type of acrobatics, frisbee acrobatics. That's a big draw. The biggest thing that he talked about were hot air balloons. So possibly having one that could take off in town. If not, definitely having one that could light up, they could get inside it, have the experience of it. And then he said the biggest draw for kids was actually having one of the older balloons that's on the ground, half inflated, where they can go inside it and play around inside the actual balloon. He himself would charge around $15,000 for that event. Total cost, in his opinion, would be $30 to $50. However, he would be willing to go to Chamber of Commerce to look for additional funds. He would go throughout the community looking for sponsorships, things like that. But then also, Calvin Reyes reached out from Henry River Mill Village, and he actually has a event coordinator on staff that they could use and work with the town. And he provided more information to Mayor Pro Tem Harold.
He mentioned that they do have an arm of their business that handles events that it's called District 12 LLC or something to that effect, but that they can, they do the Booze and Brews Festival down there. They had a Millville party or Millville Fest a couple years ago. They do a dinner party. They have somebody on staff that can handle big events, that has experience and network contacts, that can handle lots of moving pieces, especially as we consider how big an event that we want to hold. My thought is that, did Chris mention, like, where is he from? Did you say that part?
He's, what's that, or what city did he say? I can't remember that. It's Fair.
Is it FUAY?
I think it's a few
Yeah, it's hard to
Yes.
pronounce.
You read the ring down there, Raleigh.
Yes.
So it's not like local, it's.
No.
So my thought is, if you contract out somebody that's outside of the local area, you're basically paying for a service when they don't have any type of investment in the success of it. If you have somebody locally that could potentially have something to make off of it, then of course, they have skin in the game, they wanna see it succeed, and it can be mutually beneficial. Now, that's not to sway we go with one person over another, but I definitely think it's worth having a conversation to see, what a possibility would look like. I think there's advantages to utilizing the resources we have locally, with different sites in and outside of town limits. I think we have been so, in the past, focused on, the group inside of town, but I think the idea, if we want to do a festival, I think our ultimate goal is to go all in a sense, be financially, efficient with what we spend, but we want to pull people from outside areas to come into town to see what the town has to offer, instead of just focusing on the people that are already here and have a celebratory event for the people that are already here. I'm not saying that either one of these people are going to be focused on that, but I definitely think that we need to keep that goal in mind is, I don't necessarily think the budget needs to be as strict as, we may have been thinking. If we can, get a lot of value out of going bigger, but I do think our concerns, the hot air balloon thing just kind of strikes me odd. I just don't know if we have the space for that.
That was one of his concerns. In the places they normally do these types of festivals, they have much more space. One of the concerns with, we initially talked about the baseball fields on the other side. One of the major concerns with that is you do have lighting, so you can't take off from that point. He does feel like the football field would be, at the elementary school, would be suitable for one. But again, it is somewhere that's outside of our resources. One of the things I did want to mention, he talked about, is having a central focus of the festival. Whether you go with, this gentleman or someone else, is he really wanted to hit on the aspect of, children with disabilities or unique abilities. His main draw for that point was it's a way to get people to buy into a cause. It's not that the festival would just be for one individual group of people, but you would be sponsoring it for that. You'd be able to raise funds for that, and plus on top of it, any of the events you have, they'd be accessible to everyone. So something to think about for that. But in terms of the hot air balloons, yeah, you're looking at one, maybe two, if you were to go with something like that.
So yeah, Calgary did reach out. I don't think there's been an in-depth conversation on what that could look like just right now, but I definitely think that we continue to have conversations. I don't think at this point we need to necessarily decide on anything, but I do think it would be advantageous to just, have some more spitballing going on, see what sticks, what sounds
Well, I'll be able to download
One of the things we could do too is invite maybe the people who are looking to put one on, come to council next month and do maybe a little more formal presentation. Let you talk back and forth with them, get their ideas before we make a decision.
Sounds good.
Doesn't this have to be planned months at a time?
But that's the time to do it.
Yes. Okay. All right.
I will say one thing, if the guy from Pico Arena is on tippy top, you can bring somebody in from Pico Arena, you'll fill your town up. That's one of the first winners of the boys competition, Scotty Perry. Played baseball for State College, also was a voice winner, but sort of fall off the radar. But he is also, that's Pico Arena's big claim to fame. So a voice contestant won.
All right, consider appointment of planning board, board of adjustment, vacant position, and alternate position. And you have in your packet the application, and you have your ballots in front of you, so.
So let's start with the one that's fulfilling Ashley, which is the yellow highlighted one. So if you'll choose one, and then if you'll send it down to me, and I'll tally it. And you do need to sign your name. It's not a secret ballot, it's just a written ballot.
Did you sign your name?
I didn't sign no book. There. Hey, I'm losing it. I'll be all right.
both of them now?
And she said you're just doing the yellow.
Just do
Yeah,
it.
let's just do the yellow one first.
There's a yellow first, and then have the results.
Okay, so we have a tie. Okay, so now, get another one. If we'll vote for either Jeannie Cook or Dorian Palmer. Okay, so Jeannie won the first one. So I need a motion for Jeannie to fulfill Ashley's term on the planning board of adjustment.
I'll make the motion.
Okay. All in favor? All right, thank you.
Okay, so
I'll do the alternate.
yes, same thing with the alternate. Just don't vote for Jeannie, but pick your, from the other three, choose one. All right, we have a tie between Jackie and Theresa Messer. So, we'll vote for one of these.
Jeannie, not here, I think that's our next one. Only one vote.
Okay, it's Jackie Rudisell. I think I said her name right, I'm not sure. Apologize if I am incorrect. It's Rudisell.
Let's say Jackie.
Okay, so we need a motion for her to be the alternate member.
They'll make that motion.
All in favor? Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to new business. 8A, consider approval of reimbursement to HHDA for stage canopy.
Just as a brief overview, so this was actually one of the items listed. It was not counted towards the total last year, but it was listed on the sheet. It's a $300 repair to the stage canopy. So what they've done is they've requested for us to pay for that this year. Again, it was listed last year, but it wasn't listed in the final total for their budget. Technically, because they did not have the events last year, we could pay for it out of this year's budget with the remaining funds. We just wanted to get final approval from council before we did that.
I'll make a motion.
So wait, you said that this wasn't in, so wait, explain here. So the motion that we made was not to exceed a certain amount, and the total that we had did not include that amount. So now we're voting to go above what we originally.
You're halfway correct. So we got an initial line item breakdown of all the costs associated with what HHCA requested last year during our budget retreats. We approved the final amount that they had on that list. However, the stage canopy, $300, was not, even though it was listed as one of the potential items, it was not included in the final dollar amount. So because we didn't have the events last year, we haven't hit that final dollar amount. But at the same time, council did not approve us to expend the $300 for the stage canopy. So what we would like is just approval for us to expend the funds, even though we won't go above those funds because we didn't have the events. We just want approval for the actual stage canopy repairs.
Well, what I'm concerned about is going back to the tower, the public safety issue with the fact that the structural soundness has not been verified. So I'm concerned about having any events in that parking lot, no matter the organization, anything going on until that structural review is done. And so personally, I think we need to wait on this until after that review is done.
There's a fence around it.
Yeah, but the tower's a lot taller than that fence.
You know, I went Saturday. It's really well attended. I mean, the community really enjoys going.
I don't disagree with that. But I think at the end of the day, anybody that's turned on a TV in the last few days has seen what's happened with the apartment building in Miami. And I think that has brought a bigger light to the fact that the liability and security, especially after the fact that it was brought, that there was an audit done 3 years ago on that building that said this was gonna happen and it was ignored. We should have had this done previously. We could not verify, we went on a word that this was supposed to be done. And I think at this point, yes, they're well-attended events. Yes, I drove by Saturday, I saw a lot of people there. But that also goes to say that if something were to happen to that building and it was to fall on somebody, that is a major liability to us. And our biggest responsibility, on top of just the financial responsibility to the taxpayer, is the safety of the citizens of the town. And if we can't verify that that's done, I think putting a pause on any events from any organization or any money associated with those until that structural review is done, which sounds like it'll be done by next meeting, then I think focusing on that safety, that's what our obligation as a council is to.
Does anyone else have a comment? If we can take it from the audience right now, unless the council allows it.
I mean, I feel like this is pretty cut and dry.
Council, I'd like to make a comment if you'll allow.
Council. Okay.
How did the conversation shift from the canopy to the tower? You were about to vote on whether to reimburse. You've already voted to reimburse us for canopy. You did that last May at a regular meeting. I was present, presented it. You offered a compromise. The council approved it. You approved it. Now, say it wasn't in some kind of final. It wasn't a budget meeting. It was a council meeting that I attended and presented it. We asked for $12,000 for some money for our volunteer work. You rejected that. You finally agreed to $10,538. You spent, we just go check the $5,000 for the first cruise in. So you're not getting anywhere near $10,538. But you approved the canopy before. You're reneging if you don't. I don't think there's a reason to vote, but you're reneging if you don't.
I'm just asking for a delay, for a 28-day delay until we find out from the review. I'm not saying we don't give the funds.
So if a structural engineer says, I mean, what's that got to do with the cruise in, the tower?
It's a safety issue. It's a safety issue. And
Okay,
so
I got it. Yeah.
I think we.
Yeah, what
we need to
about-
cut off public comment on this, because that's the whole point of the public comment section on this. This
Well,
was
we
a-
didn't know you were going to make that kind of a ridiculous
I don't think that's ridiculous. The public safety is not a ridiculous thing. At the end of the day.
Okay, what about the 6 years that the tower stood there without any work, 5 years? You've been responsible, for the last 3 years, and you did nothing to the tower.
That's not true.
You did nothing to the tower.
All right, so I move that we cut the public comment off on this because
Well,
that's.
I asked the council and most of them agreed.
Yeah, and I say we cut it
Speak.
off. I say we cut it off because we allowed the speak to happen. And the fact that, you can say anything without any fact checking on that, you can say whatever you want to say. And I don't disagree that enough has been done.
What?
But the fact of the matter is we have taken steps and government moves at the speed of never. We have taken steps to acquiesce to every demand that has been made about that. But at the end of the day, this is a public safety issue. And I think anybody that dismisses that we are concerned about the safety of anybody there, asking for a 28-day delay is very reasonable. If you've waited this long, what's 28 days? $300 is not gonna make or break anybody. And that's not saying that we won't get it in 28 days. I still think that at the end of the day, all events, and this could be a separate issue we vote on, but this is in relation to the fact that the canopy you're talking about is centrally focused on the events that happen at that site. So to approve spending money for a canopy that, because of a calculation error previously, I mean, yes, we could still vote. I'm just one vote. I'm just one person.
Yeah.
But I personally feel that any money spent on any events for any organization, for anything that happens at that site needs to be delayed until after we find out what happens with the structural review. And that's my only opinion.
So this vote also includes that there won't be a cruise in July. There
Well, they can't
be.
rent the
That's just
gym
his
because of
opinion.
the parking lot.
That's just his opinion, they've not voted.
They
That
can
is
use the
my
parking lot for the gym.
And we can do that in other business, but I'm putting that out there now, that before we vote on whether to do this or not, it's my opinion that we delay that 4 weeks.
So can we put that in another business and just go ahead and go for the canopy? Is that something we can do?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that's another conversation to have here in a few minutes, but let's go ahead and get the vote for a canopy done. And then that can, at least we got that money approved, right? So once we get that approved, then if it's something else we gotta do, but whatever that looks like. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So let's vote for the,
Is that a motion?
that's a motion
All
to
right.
go for the reimbursement to HHDA for the $300 for the stage canopy.
Okay, all in favor? Opposed? All right, thank you.
I'm sorry, you made that motion, Eric?
Yes.
All right, consider approval of surplus items of no value.
Okay, so we have a laser jet printer that just doesn't work anymore, that we wanted to surplus and dispose of. And then we also have maintenance worker uniforms that were purchased, for Laurie's, our previous maintenance worker, that were cut to size. Some of them are brand new with tags, but they were altered to her size, which, were very specific. I did call the manufacturer and were told that they couldn't take them back, not even at a discounted rate. So we would like to surplus them and donate them to Eastern Christian Ministries.
All right, council?
One question,
Well, the printer, we could see if they wanted it, if not, it's just trash, but definitely the uniforms.
so the uniforms are gonna have the town singing on it, or is that gonna be?
It's a badge, and I was gonna see if maybe Timmy could take them off for us. It's just a little County Hildebran thing that,
Yeah, I don't think it needs to be walking around those.
yeah, it's like six or seven.
All right, do we have a motion?
Gonna make that motion.
All in favor? Thank you. All right, discussion regarding spot process and timeline of the North Center Street sidewalk project.
Yes, so the TAC released their packet, and as part of that packet, we did get a breakdown of the timeline. So I did just want to inform council that timeline, keep you updated on where we're at and where we're going. So as you remember, we did submit the North Center Street project for this, at a total cost of $1,305,000, with the town matching 20% of that, which would be around $261. Again, those are estimates. We don't know those to be the actual cost at this point, but that's the estimates we've applied for. So now, given the timeline, August 2021, they will have their quantitative scores and draft list of program statewide mobility projects released. That's when we find out where we rank along with everyone else in terms of the initial scoring. Then sometime between September and November of 2021, they'll have a regional impact local endpoint points assignment window open for local input by the citizens. TBD, to be determined in the fall, is the deadline for organizations to submit local contributions for increased scoring for regional impact projects. Essentially, we were asked early on at what level do we want to match in terms of funding. It could be 20, as low as 20. You can up that for additional points. At this point, most people do submit just a 20% match. However, if scores get changed somewhat, you are allowed to increase your funding match should you want to make your application more competitive in the future. Not something we want to consider now. Sometime between December and January, the NCDOT calculates the regional impacts total scores and programs the regional impact projects. Sometime between February and April 2022, they will look at the division needs local input window and open that for 2 months. Then sometime in the spring of 2022, the deadline for organizations to submit local contributions for the increased scoring is submitted at that point. May to July of 2022, NCDOT will then calculate the division needs total scores after any changes, and then program the division needs projects. And then finally, in early 2024, they will release the draft STIP, which is the strategic transportation. Anyway, so we'll have more information come August. I will tell you at this point, just sit back and wait on August and see what happens with the score. But that's an updated timeline.
All right,
It moves at the speed of that.
That sounds familiar.
okay, June facilities report, that is in your packet. Is there any comment on that?
Yes, so we do have an AC in this building. It's gonna cost us $9,600. I believe that's gonna, see it.
9,100 now with a different brand.
Yeah, so $9,100. It's the one right outside the hallway, so we're gonna have to replace it. We also are looking at putting all of these on a routine maintenance schedule, so that they come by how many times? 4 times a year, or
I think it's great.
3 times a year to come out and check all the units. We ended up finding, I believe, how many units was it total?
We have 11 large units and 11 air handlers, and then we have 17 small units.
So 28 total units. So that's something we'd like to have checked every time. Just given the vast number of units that we have for all the buildings, not just this building, but we have 28 total units in all the buildings.
That's already been fixed and has been budgeted for that maintenance, or do we need to do a budget amendment to do that?
It's budgeted in this year, but I don't know that we'll receive the bill in this year. If the bill does come due next year, then we can do a budget amendment to cover it then. We'll have enough to initially pay for it, and we can do a budget amendment to put that back.
So yeah, no actions needed right now, just an update.
All right, May tax report, that's in your packet. Any comment on that? Okay. May deputy report, that's in your packet. Gary's not here, so I'm sure y'all looked over that. Committee reports. The technical coordinating committee and the transportation advisory committee.
Outside of the timeline, I don't have an update.
All right. The COG policy board meeting.
They give out numerous service awards to their employees, and they read over their budget.
Burke Economic Development,
Yes, I'll have that from Peggy here shortly, or hopefully by tomorrow morning. She just sent updates just like this. I guess they did a review for Allen Woods and they're doing some council reviews.
Recreation and Tourism,
That's two or
Water Resource Committee, VEDIC,
They had the meeting early and I was unable to attend. They had to put the date on it.
okay. The Library Board of Trustees, we had our meeting, Jenny was there, they presented the budget. And I believe that Jim Wilson said everything that, our county manager asked for, they approved. So, I'll just say I believe the town gives 5,000 right now. I think at one time we said that was earmarked for children's books. I think it could be for any, I don't know, any books.
So we always have done children's books. I guess you can revisit that.
Maybe our next budget will talk about that.
Another good thing about the library, last year, most of you know, the Valley's was gonna pull out their economic support for the library. Through some work from a lot of people, Valley's last year, at the last fund, put their $40,000 back in. This year, they didn't need the encouragement, they went ahead and did it right off the get-go. I feel like perhaps the Rosters might have, and other folks might have had some encouragement previously, which is good.
Well, good.
I mean, every municipality who supports the library supported 100% what they're going to do.
Other business?
Yes, one thing I did want to bring up, before tonight's meeting is over, is we currently have the town hall closed to general public. We do have the drive-through. Is that something council wants to open up at this point?
Does the staff feel safe if it is?
I believe that since we do have the drive-through, that would be preferred by most of staff, at this point. Given the fact we have the drive-through, I think they would prefer it to stay closed. At least give it another month, see how many people get vaccinated, see what the numbers look like, and go from there.
Didn't we take steps on the inside to cover it if people were coming in them? Isn't that some of the money that was spent at COVID money?
Correct.
I mean, talking through a window, I mean, there's not contact if you come to a window.
Well, and we do have temperature scanners, so if they do come in with a, temperature, theoretically, we'll be notified and ask them to leave the building.
Of course, you're doing all your meetings by appointments, I'm assuming, correct?
Yes.
I don't see any reason to open up. If there'll be an open meeting here, I don't see any reason why we should be closed at the town hall. We've taken steps, we've purchased equipment from state money to take care of that. We can talk the science of the numbers and the vaccine today. I'll bore you to death with all that, but I don't see any reason why we should continue to close it. I mean, obviously, the preferred would be to come through the drive-through. And I think pre-pandemic, the drive-through was getting pretty good usage. I don't think, I mean, speaking from the retail side of business, even after opening up, which my business was only closed 6 weeks out of the last 18 months, to inside traffic, and still over 90% of my traffic comes through drive-through. So I think a lot of preferred retail shopping, whatever conduct is still kind of preferred by the general public to be drive-through. But I think for the people that want to decide, I don't think we should, at this point, bar them any longer from doing so.
You want to do this by consensus?
Yes. I will add one thing. And y'all all know I'm very involved with the bikes and walking and so forth. Every bike is opened up, including state employees. And they were the last ones opened up. Most every place now is, they have masks available if the person wants a mask to come in. So most every place is open back up, even the courthouse.
How's everybody
The jail has not opened back up.
If not, if there's not a safety issue, then seriously. I think 95% of people will come through the drive-through anyways, if they've been doing that.
Ben, do you got a comment?
I'm the one wearing masks, you know how I feel.
Okay. All right, well, we have a consensus, so.
Go ahead and open it. Is that what I heard up in the town hall?
Then,
All right, we're gonna talk about the tower.
Well, I got another thing before we get to that.
Okay.
It was approached to me by, a resident of Clarence Towery Circle, to revisit, or look into, the possibility of bringing that back into the town, street system. It once upon a time was a street and town system, and it was advised to see what the possibility would be to bring it back into the system. There are quite a few residents on there that I was, unaware that live on that street or have access to that street, and I think it would be beneficial to several citizens to look into that possibility, even if it's not up to DOT standard.
Logan, you got that?
Well, and here's the thing, generally we do require that it be up to a DOT standard before we take it. However, I do think there's some history with this where it was at some point in Town Street. So it would ultimately be up to council, but what I would recommend is that we at least look into it a little bit further, just to see maybe what the history on that street is. But it's up to council.
will we have to bring it up to DOT standards?
I would guarantee you the second we have,
But I also think it's important to consider how many people, do you know offhand a ballpark of how many people would be affected? Because I thought it was just like 2 houses, but it's apparently more than that.
there are at least two, yeah, there's a 10-unit apartment complex, and there are 2 duplex units, and then at least 2 homes, and then there are some other driveways that may be considered part of Clarence Towery Circle that use it, but may not necessarily be directly on the street. So you're looking at least 16 to 18 units, anywhere from 1 to 3, 4 people per home.
And I think in the last paving project that we did, one of the streets that we paved that was graded as one of the 9 worst roads in town only had 3 driveways on it. So, I mean, this is significantly a lot more people that we would be benefiting as opposed to, compared to people that we've already done. So I do think it's definitely worth looking into. Of course, yeah, it's gonna be an expense. But I mean, these are people in town that are paying taxpayer money, so if it once upon a time was in town, I think it needs to be looked into.
We can look at it. We can look into it and provide something back to council next month.
Okay, all right, thank you.
So,
And now?
Well, and we did invite Matthew Johnson of Acker Architecture and Well Builders to our last meeting to help us maybe make some decision on the structural engineer. We've already done that, council's voted for that, we are pursuing that. But if there's any comments or questions, we did want to invite him back to council.
Can I speak to the council, please?
Yes, council's approval.
I'm Matthew Johnson. I have been vaccinated. What I'd like to do is this letter that was, I'm assuming generated by Logan, was placed on the wall of the tower. And it has 5 different comments that I'd like to address if that's possible. The first comment says, review a project by structural engineer to determine soundness and safety. Where this project really began, I spoke to Logan and I told him that I felt like that we need to engage a structural engineer to review the soundness of the building. I also indicated that probably if there's a soundness problem, that there might be a lateral problem, or just some reinforcement on the inside, construction and things of that nature. I'm glad that I want to engage a structural engineer to review soundness of the building. I'd like to make a couple of comments about that because when you look at older structures like this, and this structure, I'm not a structural engineer. I'm not. However, I went to work for my first architect in 1966. So every building I've dealt with since then has a structure. I detail steel for you, early career structural steel. I even taught structural design classes because that was in college. Not a structural engineer. I just want to outline a few things that you might consider. Prior to the renovation, one of the things you could consider with the building is the roof in the stair tower rotting and falling in. If you have a building where the roof is rotting and falling in, it's not structurally safe. During the renovation, that's been accommodated. That roof structure was completely torn out. New roof structure's been put in. Put new roof down the building, downspouts on the building, so water properly drains. So that at least that issue for sure, I think you can feel confident that that issue, you do have at least one portion of the building that I feel confident is structurally safe. Just from my experience, and I reflect on this building, probably there are some issues that I can't determine what the structure here is going to look at. But I'll give you a couple ideas that I think you might address. Number one, originally this building was surrounded on three sides by another building. So now it's not, it's in a different environment. You'll probably look, I'm not saying wood, these are all things I'm. Well, the building is, start at the bottom, the building's being held up by footings. We have no idea. Probably concrete, we have no idea the shape, the size, reinforcing. There have to be some due diligence probably to check into those footings to some degree. The other, probably with this old building that's an issue, is it's basically all the walls are just laid bricks. Some of them are 16 inches thick, 4 inches, some are 3 inches wide. They're brick walls. They are non-reinforced brick walls. They don't have wire reinforced in them. They don't have rebar. They don't have concrete. Now, to determine whether these walls are structurally sound, there are two issues. One is a gravity load. Are they just going to fall in? The other issue would be lateral stability. And that's determined, the structural engineer has to, and today by code. Okay, let me go back to the thickness of the wall. These walls have a certain height. So whether, based on the thickness of this unreinforced brick wall, if the height of the wall is stable or unstable, that's probably something you would look at. I'm not saying he would, I'm just trying to give you some ideas, sir. Now, as far as lateral stability in North Carolina, an engineer has to check a lateral stability for two things. Number one is wind, number two is seismic, first of all. Wind load around here is 80 miles an hour. Now, I don't know if an 80 mile an hour wind is below that building over. But when you run the calculations, it's based on the configuration of the building, it's based on type of walls, height of the walls, and all sorts of that stuff for wind. When you run seismic calculations, you do the same thing. Whichever is more restrictive, that's what you use to design your walls. Now, the reason I recommended originally to Logan that we engage a structural engineer is for some of these reasons, my thoughts. We have corrected one thing. We got a new roof construction. Now, I want to emphasize, I want to talk about a couple of things. If you look at the drawings and you look at what was part of the renovation, nothing done in this renovation made it less structurally sound or less safe. Let's look at safety. We've got a new roof that won't fall in. It's not bringing any building. The tops of those old walls were completely open, so we had rain getting in the brick. You go through a freeze-thaw cycle, could deteriorate. Part of the renovation was to remove all the old loose brick on top of the walls, and you'll see the tops of those walls have new copper and metal coatings. The tops of those walls are safer now and more structurally sound than they were previously. All right. Previously, if you went and you looked up the sides of some of those walls, you saw brick overhang. If you go look at those walls now, you can look up and you can see there's no brick overhang. That's all been cut out. Those walls are probably somewhat safer than they were before. There were several openings that were closed today. One of them in particular was on the lower left side there, about 3 foot square. Anybody could crawl up under there, especially a child. That opening's been closed in. The building's safer now, and that brick probably made it a little bit structurally safe. Around the perimeter of the building, the lower part, there's been earth put in there, places, all those little projections have been fixed and policed up. Probably safer to walk around that building now than it was previously. So, as far as this building being less structurally sound than any work that was done during renovation, or less safe than any work that's during renovation, I feel confident it was not. Now, I can't speak for what the structural engineer is going to say as far as whether the building is structurally sound. This term of structurally sound can be fairly ambiguous. If it means complying with present day codes, there's no way that building will comply with present day codes. That building has been standing there, it's been standing there like it is now for what, 5.5 or 6 years. It might stand there 5 years, it might stand there for 50 years if you do nothing. So even this term of structurally sound, you've got to define, what are you calling structurally sound? If you're calling it by present day building codes, no way. Okay. If you're calling it by some other criteria, and I don't know what that criteria, maybe Logan can tell us what that criteria would be. I can't. Okay. Maybe you can define what you define as structures. I don't know. I can tell you by the present day code, we built the building today. Doesn't apply. So I'm glad that we went ahead and engaged the structural engineer to deal with this issue. That's something I recommended on the very thing. I'd like to move on to, so I've kind of addressed structural engineering and safety issues. I'd like to move on to this thing about the certificate of occupancy. We provide a certificate of occupancy to that Steve Hogan did. And if you want to get Steve, he's had building inspection, come down here and re-inspect and issue or not issue another certificate of occupancy. That's fine. I don't have a problem with that. I'm good. Yeah, Steve's building inspection, effective. I'm more than willing to go with whatever Steve says. We can go to the third item. This is about expressing concern about building being insured. The building has been insured for the last 5.5 or 6 years in the condition it was in. Is that correct? Am I wrong? Wrong.
Do you know the difference between a certificate of occupancy and a certificate of completion?
I'm going to get to completion. If you'll bear with me, sir, I'm going to get to substantial completion and final completion. Would you bear with me for a while, sir?
Yeah, I'll bear with you. Yeah.
I'm talking about the certificate of occupancy that the building inspector issues. I don't have a problem. You contact him, you want him to come in here, relook at it, redo it. I'm good. That's not a problem. It's up to Steve. I don't tell him what to do. Now, let's move to, there was two questions concerned of, I'm sorry, I got off. It's insurance. It's been insured as was for X number of years. Anything that was, as I just indicated, as far as safety and renovation, I don't think that anything was done during this renovation that would inhibit the insurance entity from saying it's worth less being insured than it is now. I mean, why would they insure building roofs fall down? They did it, didn't they? So I don't agree that you have a liability problem. This is, you're hearing Matthew Johnson's opinion, so that, what, $7 a day to cut copper. I don't think that anything that during that renovation occurred should inhibit building being insured. And let's move on to, apparently, Logan's concerned that the documents are insufficient. I don't know insufficient in what terms. Because we generate a document, the drawings and bid documents based on the information we were given. When it went out for bids, the town knew Logan provided all those drawings and information. At that time, nobody said, Matthew, you didn't address this. Matthew, you didn't address that. Matthew, why didn't you do this? Bids were received. The town awarded the contract. All the contract agreements, the agreement, drawings, written description that I did, all that information was put together. Logan had it, Redmond had it, they reviewed it. They authorized you to enter into that agreement. To come back and say, well, we should have done this, or we should have addressed that, or whatever. How do you do it? You had your drawings, you had the documents, you reviewed the documents. You agreed to the documents. Sufficient. I'd like to speak now to the part of the plan. At no time previous lines generated drawings. It says in here, they're concerned that the part of grant might impede approval of the building. I was never told, we gotta comply with part of grant building criteria. I've never been given any part of grant building criteria. Do any of you gentlemen have part of grant building criteria? Logan, do you have any part of grant building criteria?
I'm gonna work with you, just let you be on.
How can you address an entity's criteria when you don't have it? There's nowhere in the bid documents, in the owner contractor agreement, maybe Raymond can speak to this, is there anywhere in the owner contractor agreement that speaks to compliance with part of grant?
The word part of it is not in that, not like.
So this addressing the part of grant is an after the fact issue. It's not listed in the agreement. I was never given any copy of any part of grant criteria, any of that. It's kind of like a focus thing. Now, one thing I will reflect on as far as criteria, I know Logan indicated to me that there was some female or lady that was that I guess reviewed this building or said that she was very picky or very picky or kind of picky or whatever. Being very picky is not criteria. But let me give you an example about picky. Let's suppose this lady or male or whoever is very picky. They, before it was renovated, they opened the doors, there's these rotted wooden steps. Look up and the roof's right out, it's falling in. Now when you open the doors, the room's empty. There's a concrete slab there, even concrete where wood is. Walls have been brushed down. When you look up and there's new roof construction. This is just one item. If you're a picky person, which one of those would you prefer? I'll just use that as one example. So this part of the issue is as far as the renovation, to me, is not an issue. The next thing I'd like to speak to, and this isn't part of these items, is the concrete walking that was put in. I just want to tell you how it came about. As I told you, when the renovation, demolition occurred, we discovered there was some wood flooring in the concrete slab on the lower level. Rex calls me, or the contractor calls me, says, Mac, you got this wood flooring, what do we do? I said, tear it out, fill in the hole with gravel, pour it back to concrete. I said, okay. And he told me, Mac, when we order, we got to order 3 yards. Outside, coming to the building, there's this gravel walkway area. There's a flat slab and there's 2 steps existing. And he says, why don't we just pour concrete walk out there, pour sloped access so people can get in? I said, that's a good idea, go ahead and do it. That's what's out there right now. Now, Logan asked me, he was concerned that with the sloped wall that we need a handrail. Okay. I had Rex measure the rise and run. Rise and run is, when I went back and calculated, 6.3%. A handicap ramp is 1 foot and 12, 8.33%. So I called Steve Holden, get real inspection. I said, Steve, this is the issue that we have. I said, based on my understanding of the code, that's a sloped sidewalk and not a ramp. You agree? Sloped sidewalks do not require handles. Now, I would suggest, because this concrete and ramp is apparently becoming an issue, 3 alternatives. Number 1, I think you should accept it the way it is, but that's fine. I think it complies with the code. And number 2, we could get a contractor to put handrails there. I'm not gonna pay him, maybe he will, you just have to ask the contractor. Number 3, I'll tell the contractor, tear it all out, put back the gravel walk, put back the flat slab, put back the 2 steps. I'll do whatever you want. Fine with me. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is finishing this job up. I have issued a notice of substantial completion. Now, there's a difference between substantial completion and final completion. Substantial completion means the building is substantially complete, and there may be some items that need to be finalized and corrected for final completion. If you gentlemen want to give us a list in writing of comments, concerns, I'll be glad to get together with the contractor. We'll go over the list. We'll see how we can address those in the most efficient way. And we'll resolve any of those comments to everybody's satisfaction. I don't have a problem. And I got one last comment. Bear with me. This document with these 5 accusations that on in general basis. Put up on the wall out there, out on that wall for everybody to see. I don't appreciate a personal attack on me. I feel that's what it is. I don't like it. I don't appreciate it. Now, I stood up here and babbled long enough. I sincerely appreciate you gentlemen listening to me and listening to my response. Thank you.
Rex, is there anything?
I believe you covered it, yeah.
If the contractor has anything to say.
We got CO. CO that we got is good. And we had before 30 days is up, June the 3rd.
Okay, Logan, do you want to
Yeah, they don't have a CO, they have a certificate of completion, and after this morning, that'll be revoked or rescinded or held until.
We have a CO.
We got a
Well, they're
CO,
gonna-
we got a CO.
We got a certificate of occupancy.
Yes, we got.
I met with the county manager, the county building inspector, and the county planner, and they say you don't, so talk to them about it.
I think you had it and emailed it to him at some point.
Yeah, it's a certificate of completion. You guys have been in the business for a while now. You should know the difference between a certificate of occupancy and a certificate of completion.
I've never heard of it.
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons the board has decided to have some inspections on
And it's
outside
getting
independent
revoked.
people, since there's confusion. And I would think as professionals, you guys have no objection to that.
I have no objection.
If you've done as well as you said you've done on the job, those 5 things are not accusations at all. They will validate your position.
That's fine.
But that's not the position you're taking. You came here and accused these people of defaming you, and Johnny Chills has claimed that we defamed you. That's not true. We're trying to validate the work, to make sure everything was done in the best way possible.
And I've addressed those items
And we're gonna have other professionals also look on, to make sure.
That's fine.
You should have no problem with that.
I stood up there, I just stood up there and said it. Is that what I just
They're
said?
not defaming you. They're not making accusations. I don't think your name is listed in there anywhere saying that you did a poor job.
Yeah, I've got the document here.
What does it
Burke,
say at the top of
it
it?
does say certificate of completion,
Which is not the same.
which it says,
Not the same as speeding officer.
okay.
You know that as a fact.
And it's being revoked sometime this week because they come out and done a review compared to the drawings and the contract and nothing's sufficient.
Here's what, it says it complies with the North Carolina Building Code
Yeah,
for the
you're
type
right,
of occupancy stated.
but it's not a certificate of occupancy. It's a written document that they put in there by handwriting. Like, they typed this in there, that it was not a certificate. Guys, I've talked to them. Like, I met with the building inspector.
I've never heard of the certificate of completion.
I know, we hadn't either, and so we got it, we were kind of confused.
So, I mean, to say, you've been in business long enough, well, I've never seen it.
I can't help it.
We'll know more after we have these inspections.
I have no problem with Steve Hogan coming down here, reviewing this project. I just said I had no problem with Steve Hogan coming down here, reviewing this project, and issuing or not issuing a document. I just got through saying that up there, okay?
That's why we're gonna have a structural also.
I just got through saying up there, that I originally recommended that you get a structural engineer.
And at one time, I thought you were gonna engage a structural engineer, and you talked to somebody, and we never got a letter from them.
There's something I forgot to mention. If you look at my proposal to the city, there are 4 exclusions: plumbing, mechanical, electrical, and structure. It was not if you look at my fee proposal, Brenda,
But then you talk to an engineer,
I-
a structural guy,
what I'm
Jack.
what
Why
I'm
would you
saying,
talk to them if you weren't gonna have this program scope?
if you look at that, I excluded,
But did you talk to him? That's the question, that's yes or no. Jack,
Jack,
what's his last name was?
James Rowland.
James Brown. Did
I
you
haven't spoken to James.
ever talk to him about this?
I mean, you worked for me years ago. I have not discussed this
This
project. I have had no discussions with James Ratliff regarding this project. And the very first meeting, go back and review the minutes, Rudy. The very first meeting, I stood right there and I said, you will not get an architect or an engineer to write you a letter saying that this building is structurally sound. Go back and review the minutes.
Why does that cause to keep it open, right? Like, why does that make it safe just because they won't issue it? Like, you're saying they won't verify the safety, so it's safe?
Who are you talking about?
Structural engineer.
Well, no buildings before 1990 is, around here is, no, structural engineer joint approval. You can go.
This building, try to get this building, I get structural engineer and tell you this building is structurally sound.
Or the building that you're in over there at the bank, try to get one to say it.
Well, and I think once we get the structural engineer, there's gonna be more addressed than,
I don't
Just
have
the
a problem with
structural
structure, I just said it.
yeah.
In fact, I originally
I would,
recommended that.
I would just advise council to wait till next month until we've got the structural review, and then we can talk.
How long is it gonna take for that review?
We should have it by the next meeting.
Possibly sooner.
My concern is that there's been kind of the accusation that the renovation work made this building less structurally sound, less structurally safe, less insurable. And it did.
Don't know that, that's why we, a lot of people tell us that.
But that was brick laying up. I was the one that put the fence up.
But the structural engineer has no experience with the building previous to renovation. So how will he know that the work, since he has no experience with building previous to renovation, how will he be able to possibly say this renovation work caused the building to be less
We're
structurally?
not saying that. What we wanna know is make sure that based on what you've done today, it's safe, it's sound, and it's better than it was before you started.
Well, I have no worries with that.
Then you shouldn't be here at all, you have no worries there. But if it comes back the other way, then you understand the consequences.
Nothing that was done during the renovation made. the
I'm not saying it is,
building
we never said it is. We just want to know,
That's fine.
because I think people were surprised when they looked at the finished product after you said it was completed, and I think people had different expectations, not just this
What
council.
were those expectations, Rick?
You have to ask about
They're in
the
your
people.
drawings.
Pardon?
They're in your drawings.
Very
Yeah, the expectations are in the drawings.
That's fine.
Ask a lot of you people that,
And this
the
part
members
of
that
it,
has been in there.
this disturbs me as part of it. There's nothing, there was nothing in any of the documents that says that any of that renovation has to comply with any part of the criteria.
That's not the issue, don't run smoke screen,
Yeah,
okay?
no, no, smoke screen, I'm just.
The issue is safety and soundness. Is it better now than before you got in there?
Absolutely, yes.
That's the question.
I don't have a problem with that.
You understand that?
I understand
If they come back and say it's not, you understand that?
that. I understand that.
Then we're done.
To Reverend's point of safety and soundness, after last meeting, at the special call meeting, it was a unanimous decision by the board to continue with, the structural review. And as the point that I brought up earlier, since based off of the conversation that was had last Monday and the conversation that's had today, I still think that it is of a public safety issue to postpone or put on pause until a structural review is done, any events by any organization to be held in the parking lot near the tower of that facility until the structural review is done.
I think the concern, you brought up Mackey, and I think you answered your own question, is the non-reinforced walls.
But let me explain what my,
Yeah, you explained that to me. When
Here's
you're
why- here's
non-reinforced,
what
I
I'm
think it's
saying.
something that could fall.
here's my concern.
Yeah.
This building, by code, but prior to renovation, I don't feel any engineer or architect is going to tell you that building is structurally sound. I think if the engineer looks at the renovations that we're doing, I think he will agree that none of those renovations made the building less structurally sound.
I'm sure they make it worse. My concern is it safe now?
I guess my point of it is the concern, and I'll just give you my 2 cents worth.
Sure.
And like you said, it doesn't buy you anything. But when you go out there and we were just kind of looking around and just barely, just put our hand up against the wall, we had bricks fall out. We had several bricks fall out. And to that point,
Well, no, there was just a couple bricks that we just overlooked.
If you'll provide us a list, I just said, we'll be glad to
well,
address your
I think the whole
concerns.
point of it is, if we weren't where we were 5 or 6 days ago with the news, the building collapsed in 1981, it was built, and structure just fell. The last thing we want to do is have that to happen in our town.
Absolutely, I agree.
And I think that building right now, you said a couple things, it's got non-reinforced walls, we have 80-mile-an-hour wind that can only sustain that. Not that we have a lot of 80-mile-an-hour winds unless we get a tornado blowing through. You talked about the gravity load, was it maybe a concern? We don't know that unless we get structural engineering.
And that's the reason, the very first night I stood here, go back and look at the minutes.
Well,
The very
that's,
first night I stood here.
we are where we are now.
Right.
Where we are now is we've got to keep the town safe, whatever that looks like, because I'm all about been in construction for a long, long time myself.
Right.
And I've seen the best of the best all around this country. And I think with the slope drive, the concrete wall, we've got to be careful because, man, what if the kid falls off that walkway? I mean, we just don't know. I mean, we've got to have some kind of railing if it's that. We've got to have something to reinforce safety around there. You know, in the-
Either direction of the sign.
either way, I mean, you know, in the downspouts, it needs to go under, it needs to flow to, you know, just stuff like that. But I've been doing it so long, I see that stuff and I go, well, this needs to be here and there.
We're
I
getting
think,
water.
I think
off
the
the
concern
roof.
is this, I think the point that you keep bringing up is the fact that if it's by today's building code standard, and nothing that you did made it worse than what it was before. So I think the distinction where the council was focused on, and maybe it's getting lost, or there's a miscommunication here, is number one, I don't care what building code, what year that we're comparing it to, it's whether it's safe or not. Not is it safer than it was before, you know, because then it can still be considered unsafe. Or is it worse than it was? It doesn't, I don't want to compare then and now. I want to just know, period. And I think where we voted unanimously last Monday is the safety here today, by whatever standard, because there's different building codes that can be applied based on status, if it's a memorial, this and that and the other, and that's not for me today to decide on. The thing, every decision that I'm making in regards to this is the building safe today, period. If we were to trust anything to happen with everything that you talked about, all the concerns that you went into detail with, what we want to know is we want to have a third party at this point objectively state that yes, you were correct, that everything now today is safe if we were to put anybody in there, no matter how many people are allowed in there. Or is it not? And it doesn't matter what year that we're comparing to, or if it was before now. I just want to know if it's safe now.
And if we discount, let's just start from square one right here, like you just said. And you just discount, just say the renovations are done, the building's there. Is the building structurally sound and safe now?
And that's what we're trying to find
And,
out.
and I don't, you know, that's what I just said up there, that I welcome you to hire an engineer to determine if it's safe now in the condition it's in.
So we're in agreement.
When you say, right. And
Okay, then why are we continuing this?
Somebody's got to define safe.
That's the structural engineer.
I just have one comment. Sure. And maybe this is
Would you identify yourself, please?
Randy Mull. I'm just here at the meeting, it's the first meeting I've ever been to. But I guess my concern would be, or my question, is we are completely concerned after these gentlemen did a renovation to the tower, how structurally sound it is and how safe we need to make our community, right? It's sat there for 5 years with the roof caving in and you guys hadn't had any concern about your community and how safe it was at that point.
I played Santa Claus.
That's not so, because I've been to cruise-ins and people's got in there under the rain. They put a Christmas tree in there. They put everything up. So there's been people in there.
And when we first started this, it was just gonna be the tower. There wasn't gonna be nobody inside of it.
I played Santa Claus for 3 years.
Yeah.
Over 600 kids sat on my lap and got their picture taken at the entrance of that tower. And y'all never said a word.
Did you get approval from the town? to do that?
Yes.
Yes,
We
we
put
did.
the street up. We put the
Yes.
reef up. Yes, we have
To have
permission.
children in there?
Yes.
Yes. Over 300,
Restrained.
maybe more.
We are straight.
I mean, I agree that you need the approval. I get that. And I'm all for what they're saying. It's just concerning to me as a citizen that we're really concerned right now when they finished, when we really should have been concerned 5 years ago when everything happened. Because
when you
if-
saw the drop.
Agreed.
right, or when you agreed to this, that's when you should have had the concern, not when the end of the road comes out. It's sort of like building anything, and like I say, I've done some construction myself. You know, you are concerned at the front end of everything that happens, not at the back end. That's my only thing, because I mean, the building has been standing there for 5+ years after the burn had happened. No one got a structural engineer to see that it was okay at that point in time. It sat there and you had cruise-ins, you had festivals, you had all kinds of stuff that went on. Nobody was concerned that it was gonna fall at that time. You have an architect, this gentleman, I don't know him from Adam, but he came and presented a plan. No one was concerned about the structural when the plan came into play. They hired, you guys whatever, I guess, voted on a contractor that came in and did the work, and prior to him doing work, structurally sound was not an issue. And now all of a sudden, at the end, when it's time to pay up, and it's time to meet all criteria and see if we're gonna have an occupancy code, which I've dealt with before, when you're gonna see if you're gonna have a finalization code, I've dealt with before.
All right.
Now
You
we have an
made your point.
issue.
You made your point. Thank you. This could go on forever, and I have a previous mayor here. She's probably really critiquing me and thinking what a terrible job I'm doing here. Could I just make a suggestion? Could one council member and Logan and Rex and Mackey go out there at some time, just one council member, Logan, Rex, and Mackey, and go out there and look at it and talk about what needs to be done? Would that be all right?
I don't have a problem.
I think the issue is this, simply put, the contract was filled out, there was a date of completion, the work was said that it was completed prior to that date, emails were sent with our concerns prior to the contracted date of completion, they were not addressed. We called a special meeting to call those conditions, or to answer or ask those questions and have answers made. Those parties were not privy, or they didn't show up. So here, today is the third attempt to get an answer. I think the point of the matter is, even that the council as a whole has taken several steps to get those situations addressed. And it all goes back to, this needs to be done in open session. I think doing anything behind closed doors is gonna put everything at risk, because all avenues were taken on multiple occasions to do exactly what you said. We put every concern in writing. It was sent by Logan on June the 8th in an email, and all that stuff was already previously addressed. And I think that it is in the town's best interest, like Redmond said last Monday, that all of this, based off of the previous lawsuit that happened in the town, needs to be done in open session. And my thing is what is
How did that lawsuit end up? How did that lawsuit end up? There was no violating of open session, correct?
Well,
Thank you.
here's what I would say is we need the structural engineer before Mayor Cole can even do anything educated. Like, we're just going out
We
there.
weren't contracted to make the building structurally sound.
Right.
We were contracted to do what's on the contract documents. Now, if there's something that we failed at there, then please document it and we'll address it.
And that's why we're having these inspections.
I mean, okay.
Everybody's getting their
Architectural
paintings and why, you
review
know
will
what I'm saying,
reveal
what we're trying
what
to
was
do.
not done.
Okay,
So
yeah, but by all means, a punch list like everybody
We
else
never
does,
got one.
we'll be
We
glad to
never
address it.
received the checklist.
You were responsible for producing the checklist.
No.
Yes, you did.
We're not gonna argue about it anymore. We're going there with inspections. If you're a professional,
I'll go
if you're a
create a
professional, you will
checklist.
have no problem with those 5 areas.
Here.
None. If you're a professional.
Here's the question. If Logan says I'm responsible for creating a checklist,
I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about, we're sitting here hashing the same thing. You got those 5 items. You know what they mean. You're a professional.
Right.
You've been in the business since about the time of Noah's Ark. That's not, nothing's unusual about that. If you were in our position, you do the same thing.
I addressed
We're not gonna have one-on-one meetings because we got castigated 5.5 years ago. And the people in this room here, they're all aware of that. We're not gonna be baited
I
to do
didn't
one-on-one
recommend
meetings.
that, Rick.
I'm saying that. I'm just telling you where we are. We're gonna do those 5 things. If they vindicate you, we're fine. If they don't, where it goes, it goes.
I did, as far as generating a checklist, I'll go generate a checklist, but.
We're gonna have our inspection.
I'll generate the checklist, Logan. If
Don't
I'll
do
already
anything. No,
show
no,
what
all
said
work
my
has been
checklist.
said to stop. All work has been said to stop.
I'll generate a
No,
checklist.
no, at this point, all work has been ordered by those 6 individuals to stop.
As long as the
Well-
work is we're contractually obligated to do it, we'd be glad to finish up whatever list you have.
We're not getting anywhere. We're just arguing. Let's just put
We're gonna
some.
have those inspections done. We're giving you opportunity to say.
And,
That's it.
There's one last thing that has to be addressed with that, because you said the bill was due. So, I mean, as far as payment, was the request for payment ever submitted?
Yes.
At this point, we would look at calling the bond. I mean, there are so many issues with drawings compared to the final product. We would actually request they rescind request for payment at this point, and we'll have to call the bond company for the materials and labor.
What?
Where's our 4-foot sidewalk around the entire?
That's all, it's alternate. Did you read?
Yeah, you didn't accept it. It was an alternate, it was not accepted.
No, it's part of the contract documents.
No,
It's listed in
it was
here.
an alternate bid that we
Yeah,
not accepted.
okay.
No.
Can I
It's right
clarify,
here.
please?
All things are,
Logan,
all things
can
are
I-
contained.
Does anybody want to make a motion to adjourn?
I will.
Thank you.
All those
It
in
was
favor?
in
No, wait,
It was
still-
in it then.
I had everything on here, it's part of the contract, it says in the AI agreement. There's a time, there's a time on that bid, if we don't make a statement on the payment right now, then we're gonna be in violation of our contract. So the payment is very important. Logan, it's very important. That has to be addressed before we can adjourn, otherwise we're in violation of the contract because the bill is, the request for payment's been made. As much as I would love to get home and take care of my children, that has to be addressed today.
Do we have an itemized, I guess we have that. Purchase just stopped.
I sent Logan this certificate. I sent him the invoice and in a letter, I told him that the request for payment was approved. I sent him my statement. And then also in that letter, I indicated we had substantial completion. Now, I wanna go back to this sidewalk. If you go back and look at the bid document.
I say we stop on that because again, that's getting into nitpicky stuff that the structural review will get to. My point is on the payment. So my question is this, if you stand by your work that you completed the substantial completion of the project and that you stand by your work, then I see that it's reasonable that you will hold on your request for payment until the structural review is done. If the structural review comes back, or the architectural review comes back and says all the work has been completed as stated in the contract, then I have no problem making sure that we pay for that. But if you're requesting payment before we do that, then I mean, I look for Logan and Redmond's advice on that to advise the council, and I think if we need to make
And
a
all
motion.
we can turn loose is half the money. Half the money's not ours. Half the money is HHDA's.
But you have it.
But we don't release that money with these questions unless HCA comes to us and say, we're okay, let it go.
We're
But
talking,
Logan's talking about calling in our bond. That's
I'm
how,
not talking about that. Let's just keep it one thing at a
well,
time.
that's pretty serious.
Let's just tell them one thing. I know it's serious.
Yeah, and
I know the
that's
game.
necessary.
I know the game.
I mean,
I know the
we
game.
work with a lot of municipalities.
I know the game. Let's get away from that part.
Okay,
Let's don't go from 0 to 400.
well, that's a reason to go from 0.
Worse than that is, if I call the contractors board. That's even worse. I know the game, so. let's
Okay.
don't-
Is it
don't
reasonable to
fall-
ask that you
don't get
hold the
arrested.
request for payment until the structural review is done by next meeting?
I don't have a problem with my statement.
If everything is good as you say, it should be no problem.
I
If your
just
hands
said,
down.
we got bills.
You do it.
I understand.
And I don't understand how the structural review, if we have complied with the contract documents, how that affects us in any way. If we've done what.
Because if they come back and say it's unsafe, I want HHDA to know they're putting their money, half of that money for a building that's gonna fail.
Unsafe, but
Again, as a
It doesn't matter
contractor,
about what status, if it's unsafe, it's gonna fall, people need to know.
I didn't-
$50,000, something's gonna fall apart.
nothing done during this renovation contributed.
I didn't say it was. Never have. Don't feel, don't be paranoid. We're not saying that.
So one question here, if the engineer comes back and says the building's unsafe, so you're saying you're not gonna pay them even though
No.
you bid it
No,
out?
I said
and
we'll
they
wait to
did
see
the
what
work?
the information says. I'm not saying it's
So
gonna be hard for
so
us.
we-
I want information. I'm a black and white person. I wanna see information on it by whatever standards, by whatever comparison. I wanna see that information.
So Steph, let me ask you a question.
Well, it
Why would
comes down,
an architect and a builder, who are professionals, come back with a program to make a building still be unsafe? Why would they charge somebody for that?
You can't.
well, let me ask you something, why would you, as an owner of a building, agree to plans and documents and people raising money and doing all this stuff for a building that you didn't first figure out if it was safe or not? I mean, that's a crock of crap. That should have been your first thing. That is on you guys. That is not on anybody
Logan,
else.
what-
It is your building.
Cole had asked you a question. Did you give him a response?
What was the question? At this point, are we able to hold off on the payment on this or ask if there is a delay on this until the structural review? I'm only concerned on the payment right now.
We can look at it tomorrow. We'd need to look at it further. I would, I mean, in no way, shape or form would I release the funds right now.
Do we need to make a motion on that? Or is that, I mean, what do you need from this point? Because, I mean, I don't feel comfortable releasing funds tonight to request a payment.
is that a decision you're
What I would say is you need the structural review, and this part keeps getting left out, but it's part of it, an architectural review done prior to releasing funds.
So and that's gonna
I mean,
say whether or not the contract was fulfilled.
Correct.
And that would be a third-party arbiter to state whether or not that was done. That's not the contractor, that's not the council, you know, the contractor or the client. That's a third party deciding whether or not the contract was complete.
May I make one?
I think at this point, we've had enough conversation on that. I just think we need to make a decision on this payment so we can all get out of here.
May I say one more thing? This gentleman makes a point that I agree with, that this engineer, this third party professional you hired, apparently he's gonna do two things. First of all, determine if the building is structurally sound. And second of all, determine if the contract was fulfilled. Am I correct, Rick?
Those two, and then the architectural review will verify also. And those two say that, they're gonna say what they're gonna say.
Now, here's what I want you to do. If the contract is fulfilled, correct, and he agrees with that, you will pay me and you will pay the contractor. Is that correct?
Contracts,
If the contract's fulfilled,
we have no reason not to, then.
if this third party says the contract's fulfilled, you'll make payment.
Correct.
If he says the building is structurally not sound,
Or the plans were insufficient.
well, the plans were not intended to make the building structural. You understand?
I'm not saying that.
I want you to understand that these documents were not intended to make the building structurally sound. Do you understand that?
Yeah, I'm not sure anything could be, but I don't understand that.
Do you understand that? Okay. Do you understand, does the council understand that? These plans were not intended to make the building structurally sound. Everybody agrees? Okay. So you agree, they weren't intended to make the building structurally sound. The engineer's gonna check and make sure that the drawings, the contract documents have been fulfilled by the contractor, correct?
Substantially, not completed.
So we've got to complete it. We don't have a checklist. We get a checklist,
Well, we'll get a checklist from this guy.
then we'll have final completion. Now, my question
If
is,
you won't get paid, it's final completion.
that's fine. My question is, Logan says the architect should make the final checklist. Do you want to follow Logan's?
No work at this point will be started.
But let me finish.
There's nothing else to do
But Logan
until we
says,
get the end.
I know. But once we get this engineer's statements, then Logan says that I should make a final checklist. If I make a final checklist, he says I should do
I
it.
said you should have, not you should. At this point, no, you should not.
The structural engineer, if he
You can't
said
just
there are
say-
deficiencies, he'll list those deficiencies.
Deficiencies against the contract document.
Deficiencies against.
Absolutely.
That was our
Absolutely.
concern
You
last
fixed it.
Monday, and our concern today is that the contract as written was not completed substantially as written. And that's why we have started this process last week, continue the process
Well,
today.
we'll be glad to
We'll have
have
a
you review it, Redmond, and make sure that they have.
It protects us all. It protects us all.
Now, once again, if this building is still deemed structurally unsound, then that has, I just got this in.
I don't disagree with that. Then the town, the HHDA will have to decide where it goes from there
Right.
and how much more they want to invest in.
The documents were not intended to make the structurally sound.
Didn't say they weren't.
Okay.
All right, there was a motion sometime back about to adjourn.
Your thing about postponing.
Yes, I said multiple times that I think all events need to be postponed, all events postponed
That needs
until.
to start with the farmer's market in
And
the morning.
So tomorrow morning, they can't have the farmer's market?
That means all events, period. This is not targeting individuals, but
That's including renting the gym?
They're all
all
around
events
town.
held in the parking lot of the,
They use the parking lot to park their cars to go to the gym.
all events held in the parking lot.
All right, so they park in the parking lot to go to the gym. Does that not count?
Yes, because when
Yeah, all
they're
them people
on
park
the
at the
tower.
down here too.
Cause they could get hit.
And the farmer's market is
When
large.
the building falls.
Yeah.
Okay, nobody in the audience can speak unless they're addressed.
Who else outside, and this is a question to staff, outside of the deputy cars, parks on a regular basis that, uses the facilities?
the church rents the auditorium
Mm-hmm.
every Sunday and Thursday.
Mm-hmm.
There's a group that rents the gym on Sundays. There's 2 groups. There is a group that rents the gym on Wednesday nights.
Can parking, alternate parking be arranged for all of those that are gonna have events in the building, but parking be away from the site, but any events that take place outdoors in that site, can we make accommodations, at least for the parking part of that?
They can park at, well, let's see, the small groups can park at town hall. I don't see that being an issue.
What about behind?
The church can park behind the auditorium. That won't be an issue. Walk and Roll rents the community center. She's every second and fourth Friday nights, can have them park in the back.
Because don't have any schools.
Can we contact all of the groups where parking, alternate parking would be necessary? Would we be able to reach out to them? And all events that would be held outside, which would include the farmer's market. I know that sucks because tomorrow is the farmer's market and that's short notice and people won't find out until they show up. But I mean, I'm serious about this. Public safety is an issue. I'm still concerned about all that. And I think it is in our best place.
Could they not set the farmer market up out back?
Or in the lower part of the town hall parking lot.
The only issue would be the drive-through. People, if when they go through the drive-through, you wouldn't be able to do it on that side. You'd have to do it on the front side. But then when you have people driving through the front side, I don't think you could do it at town hall.
Can we move the farmer's market to town hall?
And that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I don't think you could because you got traffic going through both ways.
If we set it behind the building, is that gonna be, I mean, I know
I
it's
mean,
not.
we could. I just don't know if people would see it.
Well, they may not, but I mean,
Then we get hit with brick.
I'm sorry. Give me 10 seconds. What do you got?
Town would like to use the adjoining property in this direction. I can make that available to them
For the farmer's market?
for the farmer's market and additional parking if necessary.
Well, I think behind here would be a better, because it's paved.
So we can move the stage and have it back there?
Good point.
what's your suggestion on that with the stage and the cruising? If he can be moved to another site, I'm all about it. I just don't want anything there that would cause any issue. I mean, this is not targeting anybody individually. This is purely a safety issue.
Yeah, maybe tomorrow I'll reach out to Mark. I don't know if we can do it for tomorrow because they show up at 7 and set up. And but they do set up against the back wall, so they are very far away.
That's the back road and then parking lot back there.
Yeah, parking lot back wall.
You're in the construction, also, that back wall still within fall zone.
Exactly. And it's even worse because that's a ricochet. When it hits that wall, it's gotta come back this way. So whoever's in line of that wall is gonna get took out.
That's right.
You can't guess that tower's gonna fall that way, or this way. If it falls that way, it's gonna go right through the front entrance of the gym.
Alright, we'll see what we can do about tomorrow.
If it falls this way, it's gonna take out that end of the building.
Tomorrow, and then we'll see if maybe.
As long as them businesses go, that's okay.
Exactly.
I don't know if the preacher.
Just be a little
over here
self-service.
will do it in the parking lot, maybe
That
he
is
will.
true.
I don't think that preacher lets do anything.
I don't think you've seen it.
So I guess
I wish you'd rephrase that. I don't
can
think
arrangements be
it's
made for all events,
But the camera's still be on.
Something.
up to and including the cruising?
Yeah, we just gotta find a different, a safer location.
So Redmond, I guess from a legal standpoint,
Well, I mean, hold on before we go there. Can the
We
cruising?
said it would be up to HHDA.
Well, and the road closures, I'm just, Because, I mean, if we have to modify your road closures, then we're gonna have to consider doing a special meeting, and I'm not opposed to that. I just wanna make sure arrangements can be made, but if arrangements cannot be made for a specific event, no matter what the event is, then we need to postpone that event.
Well, so let me ask HHD, so you can still use the road, South Center Street, that's already closed off. Is that enough for the cars?
South Center Street's outside the
Or where
falls.
you gonna put the water?
But it doesn't do us any good. Because we can't move the stage up on the road. Jimmy Jones won't let us.
We also have to have access to water.
Who's Jimmy Jones?
The Reverend Jimmy Jones across the street, he's not gonna let us have anything to do with it.
Sausage or something.
The only way to do it would put the stage back here in the grass somewhere. Still reach the power cords. But the whole thing about it is,
Water.
they're not understanding how it's devastating us. We have a lot invested in this already.
But we can't
If we don't make the money go that we make, then we don't pay rent. We don't get stuff for the museum. We don't, it's a lot of people don't understand how much work goes into this. We bust our butt weekly to make it happen once a month. That money we draw, this week we made $2,000. That ain't nothing. We still gotta pay rent, we still gotta upkeep the museum.
Then we buy materials for things.
Material, whatever we do to keep the museum up. That's where we get the money. We don't have money coming in from anywhere else.
But I would just like to say this, that because we won't have power because we use the power
The
of.
power's right there at the tower.
We
So
won't
if we
have
have the
power.
stage out there and we're not allowed to be by the tower, how are we gonna plug the car cord?
We won't have power down there.
Well, we can have a conversation about the museum later. I mean, the town can
I
get
understand
parks and
that.
recreation money from the state to pay for all of that. If that is a concern, the town can take that over just like any other municipality. But the concern I have is, can arrangements be made for the event itself? And if all conditions for any event can't be met, then I think it's in our best interest to postpone whatever event that is for 1 month. And yes, I do understand the financial hit, especially after having an entire year of not being able to have those events. But again, I think the safety is the only thing that I'm concerned about at this point. And just like you said, you don't know which way the tower could fall. You don't know about ricochet. I mean, there's a lot to that. And so, a decision needs to be made. I don't know if it's a blanket decision to say, if an event cannot have all that needs addressed, then it needs to be postponed for 1 month or until the structural review comes back. And then at this point, if an event can be modified, then we go ahead and make whatever modifications necessary. If we leave it that generalized, is that enough to give the staff to work with to make those adjustments on the fly? Or do we have to address all of that here now?
When's the structural, did he set a date?
It's gonna be, before they come out and actually do it, 2 to 3 weeks before the structural review
So
actually.
it might be 2 months before we have a cruise.
It's gonna, I would bet money based on how busy everyone is, how backed up everyone is. The earliest he can get you something back is gonna be July. So then you're looking at that point, you're looking at least a month or 2.
But like I said, if they get it earlier, then we can obviously call a special meeting earlier to address those needs. But, at this point,
the tower's not gonna be more safe even after he reviews it. So you're looking at least 2 months.
well, is there enough, and if I put it in a motion, if that's what needs to happen, for the staff to make whatever adjustments they need to accommodate everybody as they possibly can, but if all needs and things are not met, then we have to postpone it. Is that enough for a motion for y'all to do whatever needs to be done?
Where are we at on the legal side of this, Reverend, as far as, should we,
What aspect of the legal side?
I guess, so do we need to wait for this engineer to come in and do his work before we have anything else in that parking lot? Whatever event that
That's the
is.
most prudent thing to do. It is to make sure that all eyes are, because they're all loose bricks. They're loose bricks.
There's quite a few,
And that's just what we can get just by walking up to. We don't know at any height above 6 feet.
And it may very well verify, and I hope to God it does verify, that Bell Construction and Icon Architects have done exactly everything set by the contract, and I hope they do, and that will clear all that stuff out.
Absolutely, yes.
Be fine, and then we'll have to make a decision, the community will have to make a decision, if the building is not structurally sound, if they want to make an investment to make it structurally sound.
And in any project, there's always gonna be hiccups and obstacles, and this is hopefully it's just a small bump in the road to continue what the unanimous decision of the board to continue this project. But I just need confirmation from staff that if, in a motion, if we put that, is that gonna be enough to work with, or do you need something more specific?
The goal is to find alternative locations and to provide power. They used to have power at the little convenience.
Not enough.
No,
Not enough for the band.
We got the ice cream,
you
the
gotta
hot,
have 220.
Yeah.
yeah, exactly, you gotta have
Have water.
Not 220,
multiple
but
outlets, you need eight outlets minimum.
It's something you need to address and get back to us tomorrow.
Yeah, that's a lot of, I'm not even aware of all the people we're gonna have to call. How
Be a lot
many
of generators.
And we got, yeah, it's,
If there's an issue with HHDA paying museum rent, I see no problem with us foregoing rent while this is going on.
that would be a fair compromise.
say,
I don't disagree with that.
I'm good with that.
Yeah, I think it's more than, yeah,
That's reasonable.
I don't know what that number is right off.
Thank you.
Now, are you saying like forgiving that monthly payment, or are you saying delaying that monthly
I'm
payment?
saying forget it. They're not able to raise the funds. Why would we ask them to?
Well,
I'd say forget it then.
Talking about why we're going through this structural next month, whatever.
Yeah, at least for the month of July.
If we get soon, we'll have a special meeting. We need to keep in mind the camera only has 2 months. You don't need to take so many problems on at one time.
May I say one thing? Okay,
No, go ahead, I'm sorry.
I think that my real concern would be putting aside the renovation issue, regardless just that, but I feel like they can lie. If this engineer comes back and says that and being a Hildebran person, I'm talking like that now, not an architect. If this engineer comes back and says it's not structurally sound for a variety of reasons, okay?
Which could happen. I agree.
For a variety of reasons. And there are two possibilities of it. One, renovation can be done to it to make it quote structurally sound.
You can shore anything up. I agree.
Two, it may not even be possible without doing so much damage or having to tear down so much. You can't make the structure sound. And then the city's gonna face an extremely difficult decision. Number one, can they even afford to make the structure sound?
I don't wanna get into rhetorical and fear mongering, because I don't have a degree in philosophy, I have a degree in science. And I don't wanna start going down, well, what if this and what if that? We gotta cross the bridge when we get the black and white information, and I say we leave it at that. The information on the floor right now is, does the town does the staff have enough direction in a motion for us to vote on to make whatever adjustments is necessary, with the goal of mind to try to keep every event possible with the proper accommodations? And then did we settle the payment issue that we delayed, that payments delayed until all of that? Because I know there is a time clock on that. Had those two issues been addressed, and I don't think if they've been addressed, we can't leave. And they have to be addressed today.
I think Logan needs a little more time. You gotta figure out the facilities issue.
Yeah, I mean, that's a lot of events. And a lot of people, to say that we can make the accommodations for it this quickly, it's gonna depend on how many we got coming up, how far out are they, what times of day.
You can let us know by email when you decide that.
What about the payment part?
I mean, I would not advise paying until you have the structural and architectural.
I thought that's what Redmond said a few minutes ago.
That's what they said, but I mean, we are on a time clock, and I wanna make sure that they understand that if we need to vote on it, or if that's just direction, if there's gonna be.
It would make me feel better if you wanted to vote on it.
I think you're direct.
And the other idea is you've already voted to have me hire a structural engineer to review the work, and we've already sent out that document. I don't think you need to vote, but
If it would make it easier, then I definitely think we need to vote on it. So I'll make a motion that we withhold payment until the structural and architectural review is done.
Based upon what we just discussed.
And then at that point, we can address it at that point. But I think this time.
All those in favor? Thank you.
What about the forgiveness of the payment?
Yeah, do we need to vote on that too?
Let's vote on that, yeah.
Yeah, and this is during the term while they, whatever that
During,
is.
during.
July.
While they're displaced, while they're displaced, no rent.
Waive the-
That's not to accommodate the money that we're gonna lose.
It's like you got a restaurant, if you're not open, you're not paying your fee, not on hamburgers.
You didn't have the best last year, so maybe we should have one here.
Good try.
You made that motion.
I make the motion, waive the view bid fee, free.
As long as they're displaced.
Until it gets scratched out.
All in favor? Thank you.
We did the motion.
And
He made it way back. All in favor?
Bill made a motion at 8:15.
It was just one.
It was out of order, it was out of order.
Hey, guys, how are you?
I'm just tickled death to be here.
Me too.
I just sit there proving that. Please, Dad. I'm good, you know, I'm gonna do what I'm doing.
House that's 50.